What's going on, everybody? Today I'm going to show you how to replace the fuel pump, aka fuel pressure regulator, because that's built into the pump. Same with the filter. On a 2002 Dodge Dakota. Should be the same steps from 01 to 04 for sure, and then probably the same from the 97 to 2000 as well. It may also be worth checking, just kind of going underneath and checking your vehicle. This might be the same steps for the Durangos as well, since they do share a chassis. I'm just not sure with the different body layout. It might be slightly different steps, but it should be you know, a pretty similar setup. So if you're doing this on a Durango, this video should help you out as well. That helps to have the back end up in the air at least. You don't have to have the front end up, but drove up the ramps, you could put the axle on jack stands as well. Just something to get you a little more clearance. I'm gonna start by opening the fuel door and remove the fuel cap. Removing the fuel cap is also going to vent any pressure in your fuel system, so that way when you unhook the fuel line down there, it doesn't spray all over you. We need to remove the three T25 Torx head screws that hold the fill neck in place. Don't drop the screws down the fill neck. Once you get all three screws out, I'm going to reach under the fender here and grab the back side of the neck, or you can do it from out here. You can see here there's these little tabs that go over the body of the truck, so you have to rotate the neck clockwise to get it lined up with the notches, and then you can pull it down and through like that. And now we're ready to go take the fuel tank straps off. All right, so the factory bolts that hold the straps in are 13mm socket. You'll probably need an extension to come down between the drive shaft. I'm gonna use a cordless impact. I've already done this once and my factory bolts broke, so mine are a different size. I just used a nut and a bolt. The factory ones thread into kind of like a metal body clip. Like I said, they're at 13, so I would spray those with some penetrating oil. So we're gonna go ahead and take these out now one at a time. I've intentionally ran my tank pretty low, so it's not gonna be very heavy. I'm just gonna catch it with my body. But if you have a bunch of fuel in it, make sure you have someone to help you, or get a jack or some sort of stand under it to lift and lower it. All right, so when you get close, make sure you keep tension on the strap, pushing upwards to keep the tank from falling. Also, there's gonna be some tension on the strap itself, so it's gonna kind of fling out and wanna hit you in the face. Kind of let it slowly drop, and then get it below the drive shaft. And you will have to kind of just bend it down out of the way. Now's a good time to replace your tank straps if they're too rotted out. I will post a link in the description where you can get tank straps as well as the pump. Otherwise, you can go to your local auto parts store. All right, now make sure to support the back half of the tank. We're moving to the front now. And carefully bring it down. Bring the front down first. You're going to want to support the back half, because that's where all the wires and everything go. And set the front half on the ground. Now this is coming from the front of the truck. You'll see it's lined. So we have to unhook that from the tank. All right, so instead of unhooking multiple things from the tank side, we're just gonna unhook this line from the evap canister right here. Just gonna pull on the rubber, give it a little twist, and it should come right off. Now's a good chance to check all these evap lines to make sure they're not cracked or anything, causing any evap leak codes. Now the only thing we have to unhook on the tank is the actual fuel line going into it. So here's where the fuel line connects to the regulator there, the pump. You can see there's there's a blue clip inside the black line, and there's two tabs, one on the left, one on the right. We have to pinch that together and then pull on the line to unhook it. If you can't get your fingers in here to do the clips, I've also used like a needle nose to come down and just gently squeeze. I was able to pop them with my finger, and like I said, just pull it off. Be careful because some fuel could come out of here. We're gonna leave that up for now. And now what we need to do is slowly lower the tank down. You gotta be careful because the filler neck needs to kind of be fished down with the tank, otherwise it'll get caught above the frame rail. Just try to be gentle when you let the tank come down, make sure nothing's binding or pulling. All right, now I already unhooked this before dropping the tank just because it was hard to show with two people under there and the tank in the way, but you will have to unhook the actual pump before you can drop the tank all the way, otherwise the tank will be hanging by this harness and pulling on it. So to unhook it, you'll have to slide the tab. There's a red tab there should be there. You can see there's kind of a cutout on this end, and this side is solid. So you'll want to push on the side that's got the cutout. I'll slide the tab over, and then you can push on this tab here, the little gray tab on the connector, and separate the plug. All right, so as you can see right there, it says Precision. I wasn't kidding, I just replaced this thing like a month ago, and it's been worse than the factory one ever since I replaced it. But we need to remove this clip now from the regulator and pump because the new one does not come with it. What you have to do, as you can see, the tabs are catching on this silver ridge. So you gotta kind of pry out on that one as well as this one. So I'm gonna do one at a time. Just gently get underneath it with a little pick. You can use a little flat blade screwdriver. Don't bend it any more than you have to because these can get brittle. And just get that part over it. And repeat the same steps on the bottom. Slide it off. If it does break, the auto parts store should stock these. Now we're ready to, bless you. Now we're ready to rotate this collar counterclockwise. That's what holds the pump in. If you can't rotate it by hand, you can use a flat blade screwdriver or a pry bar and try to get it on the ridge and hit it counterclockwise. I'm gonna let it kind of drain for a few seconds so I'm not dumping raw fuel all over. Make sure there's no open flames or sparks around this while you're doing this. All right, so we pulled the old pump out, the old new one. Now we're gonna remove this rubber seal if it didn't come with the pump. Now's a good time to check your tank, see if there's any rust chunks or dirt. As you can see, mine's pretty good actually, so no worries there. You could use, I don't know, like a paper towel or some sort of net or screen to get any sort of contaminant out of there if you had any. All right, so the new pump, this was kind of just wrapped around it. So I undid that, so we had full harness here. We're gonna leave this little cover on for now until we get the tank up into place just to keep dirt from getting in there. Make sure you take the rubber band and this plastic bag off the float so it doesn't get flooded. All right, so I've got the wrapping removed off the float, made sure it moves freely, make sure it's got a filter on it. The last new one that I got it didn't have the filter, but I had the truck downed. There's no way to go to the auto parts store, so I ended up throwing it in anyway, and lo and behold, it was a junk pump. So this one I have a little more confidence in. We're gonna plug it in now before I go through all the work of putting this back up and make sure that the gauge works and that the pump primes. All right, so as I said, I've already got one bad pump. So this is the replacement for that. This time it actually came with a filter on it. And instead of doing all the work and finding out that it's junk, I just unplugged my old pump and plugged the truck side harness into the new pump and turned the key on. It did prime this once dry. You don't want to do that over and over because it'll ruin the pump, but one time wasn't going to hurt it. And I made sure to leave the key on, and then I held this all the way up. It takes a few minutes, but I made sure the fuel gauge went all the way full and then all the way back down to empty. So this one seems to actually be working, unlike the last replacement. All right, so remember the fuel line comes in from this side. So we want this port to be facing that way. You should be able to rotate it if you have to. I didn't really have to. And we want to make sure the float is facing towards the front of the truck. As you can see, it does come up quite a bit. And right here, the tank is bulged. So you'd either want it facing that way or this way. But if we were to rotate it like that, then this would be facing, we'd have to rotate this way more, and then this would be in the way. And I'm not sure what's all in here as far as how far this neck goes down. So I don't want that to be in the way either. We're gonna run it facing forward. And I've actually pulled the rubber seal off because it's gonna be easier to tuck the seal onto this and then force the pump into the seal instead of trying to force the pump and seal into the tank. So we're gonna go ahead, get the float facing forward, fish that in first. And then now we can get our seal on. That, and push this, double check the direction the float's facing, it's good. Push this down and reinstall our plastic collar and tighten it by turning it clockwise. All right, so I got this as tight as I can by hand. I'm gonna give it a few knocks with the pry bar. Just I want to make sure it's a good seal here. I don't want any gas sloshing out or anything like that and having to pull the tank again. So that's probably good. All right, we're gonna put the harness, tuck it up out of the way for now so it doesn't get caught on anything. Slide the tank back under, and we're ready to reinstall it. We're gonna again start. We're gonna go in reverse order. We're gonna put the back end up first, so we can fish the neck up into place and get the connector plugged in and all that. And then we'll need help, or two people or a jack to get it lifted all the way to get the straps started. All right, now if you got to replace your straps, you just rotate it sideways like this, and then you can see there's a slot. You'll kind of lift it up. Mine's too rusty, so I have to force it or spray it or knock some of that rust off, but you just lift up and then it'll pull out. I've just got some severe rust going on here. Now again, the factory clips, there's usually clips right here with nuts welded to them that the bolts thread into. Mine are broken, so if yours broke like mine did, I ended up actually having to torch the head off my bolt, which was kind of scary by the gas tank, so I don't recommend you doing that unless you know what you're doing. But I torched the head off, got the tank down, and then I torched it the rest of the way out, removed those clips, and I'm just using a normal nut and bolt now to hold the straps in. You can see there's a little square hole here that you can fish a washer and a nut up into, and then on the back side here where the other strap goes, there's also another window, and you can just barely get a wrench up there to kind of hold it when you're tightening the bolt down. Now I can tell you from experience after doing this twice now that it's easiest to start tucking your filler neck up and over the frame now because it's so much taller than the tank, and you have to fish it between the driveline and the frame, and then between the frame and the body back over to go up into place. Step one. All right, as you can see, the tank is halfway up and the neck is bent up over the frame rail. Now you got to fish it up into the hole there. So we're gonna keep going up and just kind of working this thing, making sure it's not getting stuck on anything or bending. I will post a link in the description if you need to replace your filler neck as well. Okay, so we've got the neck about 75% of the way into position there. So the next step is going to be to plug this in if it'll reach. Otherwise you'll have to wait until you get it up a little bit higher. But I'm going to try to plug that in now, as well as try to hook up the fuel line. So now we can go ahead and remove this gray cover from the pump port. just pulls off, and put that blue clip on there. All right, so when you put the blue clip back on, the open end right here goes on first until you hear it click. As you can see, it doesn't come off now, so it's in position, and we're ready to lift the tank up, get the fuel line hooked up, and plug this in. Now to plug this in, you obviously just plug the two ends together, push nice and tight until you hear the gray connector here click. And then once it's clicked into place, you'll have to slide that red tab back over the opposite direction to lock it into place. Okay, now we're gonna hook up the fuel line, and if you'll remember, there's a clip on each side of this clip, and if you look at the fuel line, there's a square window, one here, one on the other side, so you gotta get the tabs to line up with that when you hook it up. It's a little difficult to film just because it's a tight area, so I apologize if this is not a good view here. You don't want to bend this line any more than you have to, because it's kind of a thick plastic and it can snap if it gets old and brittle. There you go, clicked into place. All right, so the tank is up. It's definitely easier with two people to wrestle those tank straps. Got both bolts tight. Now make sure none of your the pigtail, the connector, none of the electrical or anything's hanging down. Look up in here and make sure that your fuel line is not kinked going to the pump. Then come back to the front. Don't forget to hook this vacuum line back up that runs along the full length of the tank. Just push it back onto your evap canister. Wiggle it on like that. Make sure it's tucked up and inside the heat shield here. And now, all that's left is to reinstall the filler neck. So we have that majority in place already. Just gonna fish it up here. Again, you'll have to line up those tabs. And rotate counterclockwise until the holes line up. Reinstall your 3 T25. Make sure not to over tighten them, because if you're like me, it probably threads into a really rusty filler neck. Doesn't need to be anything too extreme. Just holds it into place. Those retainer clips should do some holding of their own as well. I like to start all of them before tightening one, just in case you gotta adjust it a bit. Now reinstall your gas cap. And we're ready to start the truck. Being that we had the pump down, we're gonna wanna key it on, let the pump go, key it back off, key it back on. We're gonna do this 3 or 4 times just to prime the system since we lost rail pressure. As you can see now, my fuel gauge when we got here, even though it's almost empty, was reading 3/4 full because that old pump wasn't working. Now it's reading accurately. We're just under 1/4, or it looks like about 1/8. And there we go. Gas light works too. So I just got a monitor now. The reason we're doing this is because I would have to key my truck on and off about 6 times in the morning to start it, because the fuel pressure regulator was junk, which is built into the pump. That's why we replaced the pump. So now I will have to just kind of monitor and make sure it still starts better than it was before. If it's still starting bad, then either we got another bad pump or we have another issue on the fuel rail or something of that nature. But that concludes the fuel pump replacement. If this video helped you out, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe for more videos like this, and check me out on Facebook at Tony the Truck Guy. Thanks for watching.